that even today, intimacy happens online. Don't ask me how, but it does. This is the era we are in. Some of you here are meeting and dating people who live in a part of the world you've never been to. James, Uncle James, they do this. Yeah, now, Uncle James come from the era where they had these things, young people, you may or may not have heard of them, called paper. They were made out of like pulp. And they had 30 lines on them. And they had a writing device, an instrument called a pen. And on the paper, you wrote physically. I know, it's crazy. I know, because, we're here, and here, they were here. And you write a letter. I come from the era where the very first girl I ever asked out on a date, I was in primary school at the time, year 4. And I wrote her a letter in color pen. Remember those color pens? And every paragraph was a different color. And if you were smart, you didn't just do this, but lads, what else did you do? You sprinkled on it some glitter. So when she opened it, joy. But of all of these, there was the closing touch. What was the one thing you put on that piece of paper before you folded it? Perfume. How many of your mothers got upset realizing that their bottle of perfume was half consumed with you spraying those letters, right? I come from that era. Uncle James, these young people don't do this now. You know what they do? They call it sliding into the DMs. We need a whole masterclass just on this, man. There's a whole language about this sliding into the DMs thing. So there's a young man in Ghana that I mentor, phenomenal young man. And we went out for dinner last time we were in Ghana. We went out for dinner. And at the dinner, there was a young lady that he took a liking to. He took a fancy to this young lady. And so, afterwards he's like, she's, I said, yeah, she's a beautiful girl. And indeed she is. Stunning, gorgeous girl. And he says, she gave me, I asked her for a number. She said, I can connect with her on Instagram. I was like, wow. Okay. He says, but what do I say? I said to her, here's what you do. Send her a picture of a dog. One of these animated dogs. You know those emojis? I said to send it to her on the Instagram and then write the words, found it. I know. See, the ladies are like, where's this going? So he does. He sends a little picture of a dog, words, found it. And of course, she then replies. She says, found what? He says, I found the dog you sent to steal my heart. Masterclass, comrades. Masterclass. Masterclass. So, the world we're in has changed. Even how we do intimacy has shifted and changed. So the marketplace today exists within a platform. There is something my brother Julian said. And I literally wanted to stand up and jump and shout when he said it, because it is the first time. No, the second time I've heard a fellow African say this. It's what most African regulators don't understand. The power of the United States is that they don't build small businesses. I'm going to say that again. They do not build small businesses. As a percentage of GDP, I would argue, and I don't have the data for this, but I'm going to argue that as a percentage of GDP, you're most likely to find that there is a disproportionate amount of effort and capital that we place into building SMEs rather than building platforms that build SMEs. So in the US, they obsess less over your SME. They obsess more over building a search platform where someone can find your SME. They obsess more over building a social media platform where you can build a shop and sell for your SME. They obsess more over building a distribution infrastructure, a rail infrastructure, so that whatever product you sell online, you can distribute and deliver without a physical store. Yeah. The power is that they have understood that to build at scale, you don't build units, you build a platform. And then you leave the market to build the units. Does that make sense? Yes. So for those of us then, in this era, one of the mistakes I think we're making is we're still thinking about things in the olden way, whereas things have moved fundamentally to become platform-based. So I shared with you this example about the South African business. Some of you here might be aware of them. When Discovery came into the game of insurance, insurance was a grudge purchase. It was that thing you bought because you needed to have it. If you needed to get a home loan, the bank said, insure your life, just in case. And they really started thinking creatively about how do they stop treating purchases of products as customers, but rather start treating them as individual co-creators of the product you're buying. Individual co-creators of the product you're buying. Which meant they needed to actually understand you, the individual. Most of us here, myself included, when we think strategy for an organization, you generally think at the macro. And so for things to make sense at the macro, you need to create universal pockets of truth. All young black females between the ages of 25 and 34 behave in this way. A universal pocket of truth. It doesn't capture the sum total of the individuals, but it clusters them into some aggregate truth. And around the aggregate, you build a value proposition. And in today's world, where I just proved to you the platform is built individual for you, the person you're serving now wants to feel like an individual. I want my interest rates to reflect me, not reflect my demographic. My interest rates need to reflect me, because I might be an outlier. And so the rate of interest I pay, the cost of capital I'm paying from you, Mr. Bank, must reflect me. If I went to an education institution and graduated with a master's, and a friend of mine graduated with an undergrad, I think my interest rate should be different to theirs. I think my payment terms should be different to theirs. If I'm a highly specialized doctor, highly specialized, I think my interest rate should be different to the person with a master's. Me, individual. Which means the aggregate doesn't work anymore. The aggregate doesn't work. And so what Discovery figured out to do was how do you build a relationship with the individual customers so that how they behave informs what you sell and how you sell it. The creation of their Vitality program, by the way, which in the US is actually the name of the full insurance business. Because, listen to this, one product, the Vitality product, has now become more brand synonymous and powerful than the mother brand of Discovery. It made a personal connection. It said, what do you eat? When do you eat? Where do you eat? Do you work out? How many times? And where? And what kind of exercising do you do? Do you take any additional supplements? What else is built into your life that can enable us to tailor-make a product just for you? That's an easy place to start when you're in the insurance business, right? Because you employ actuaries. So they can mathematically model this. I would have loved to see the marketing person that came up with the idea for this to be done. Because they would have had to convert marketing to mathematical extrapolation, which is the place I want to go to next. Most of us still think about customers in the demographic. We bunch them into groups. The problem with the internet is it's changed that. As some of you here today following people on TikTok who live in a part of the world you've never been to and will probably never travel to. But you know all about how Habibi means baby in Arabic because you're following a certain person on a social media platform. There are some of you here today who are connecting with like-minded thinkers and movers and shakers all around the world. Because at a psychological level, they say something and believe in something that resonates with you. You probably will never meet them, but they say something that resonates with you. You know, before the world we live in and the continents were split into the continents we have today, we had one supercontinent called Pangaea. I'm going to argue here today that the internet has converted the world into a Pangaea once again. Whereas we used to be different continents, different time zones, different languages, different cultures, we're one again. So, you're on a business, you're looking for a graphic designer, you go on Upwork or Fiverr and you hire somebody living in the Philippines. My assistant at the moment, Heidi, lives in the Philippines. We've never met. I know she's got a child, a 5-year-old boy. He's sickly at the moment. I know she's been married for 6 years. But she's my assistant. 10 years ago, if I wanted an assistant, they must assist me. Come assist me. Bring me tea at 8 in the morning. Now, in that world, the assistant was measured, as we measured all things, by being in the room, being present. In today's world, it's measured by what they are delivering, the output, the outcome. Do you see why now, as a leader, you can only lead if you're willing to delegate decision making? Because there's some of you here who are still worried about, did people log on to the Zoom call this morning? This is not a measure of productivity, ladies and gents. I can be in the room and completely absent. In fact, I probably am. And so the measure then isn't whether or not I'm in the room, it's what am I doing? What's the outcome? What's the deliverable? Now, some of you here are smiling. If you're not smiling, we're probably talking about you.